Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Palace game, talk about some of the issues with fitness, injuries, and concerns behind the scenes at United, talk about Rashford, the manager, and a lot more, as well as center-back targets for the future. So let's get right into it. Okay, so first and foremost, obviously, reviewing this Palace game, I, it was just I think it was a bad game for so many reasons, frustratingly so, because United could have won. Obviously, there was chances. They didn't give up too much. The goal that Crystal Palace got was obviously, a set piece, great strike, nothing anyone can do about it type of goal at that point in time. Although it was a poor foul to give it away. And the biggest concern I think that many people have, myself included, is I still don't really see a plan. We'll talk about some of the specifics of that later, but I still don't really see a plan. I see a good plan when it comes to building out the back, controlling possession, how we defend, out of possession, all of that. But the biggest thing I think that as United fans, many of us would complain about stretches back to, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's time as well. Teams learned to allow us to have the ball and not be able to play in transition. Probably our best goal-scoring chance came in the first few minutes, 15 minutes or so, when Rashford put Højlund through with a ball over the top that he almost got over the goalkeeper, but was cleared by a Palace defender. That was probably our closest sight of goal in transition. We had a few other chances that weren't far off, but the patterns of play in the attacking third in terms of creating chances are non-existent for the most part. It's haphazard. It's random. It's over-reliant on Rashford trying to take on a bunch of players, or someone taking a pot shot from the top of the box or something like that. Or a lot of crosses that go to nobody. So it's been, those are the biggest frustrations, is that there's still not much of a plan there. And there's just a certain underperformingness from practically team-wide in the Premier League that is frustrating. And it's hard to put your finger on it, but I want to talk about some of the potential reasons why and get into it. So let's move forward, because I think that the subjects that I'm going to cover moving ahead are the biggest concerns currently at Manchester United, and they're not my opinions. First of all, there's news kit that came out that Lisandro Martinez has been playing with essentially his metatarsal is still broken, not fully healed after the surgery. This is the injury sustained last season. And that's frustrating. It's frustrating because he was obviously not at his best to start the year. I pointed this out quite a few times, that he was actually one of our worst players, but there was something obviously wrong. And that is the reason. He's been injured still, not fit, playing through pain against Brighton and Bayern, and now needs another surgery and is out till probably the new year, maybe longer. Probably the new year. It's not really acceptable, this type of thing, to happen at a club like Manchester United. If it were one thing, it would be something, but it's not. Players don't trust the club. Players worry about rehabbing at the club. This has been an issue for a long time. Players want other advice and opinions from people outside the club on injuries, illness, fitness, things like that. And one of the things that I've been kind of banging on about recently, I'm gonna fix the size of this while I'm just sitting on it, is I spoke about this in one of my episodes, one of my podcasts with Phil recently. I gave information. This is not an opinion. This is information. And it comes from essentially a quite impeccable source of information that I have a lot of certainty of, that would know firsthand on all of this. And what I was told is comparatively to some of the other clubs like Brighton, for example, and there's a debate here, that United's work regime in training is way over the top. They're not the only club that has this issue, but theirs is way over the top. And I was given that information in comparison to a club like Brighton that does a lot less running during the week and things like that. And, one of the reasons that they do this much running is because they're going to be expecting to have two games a week, I should say, for a long time. But they're training twice a day, doing extra running. And when players are dropping like flies in terms of injuries, they're not gaining in fitness. Mason Mount didn't gain in fitness being out for a month. Rafa Varane didn't gain in fitness being out for a month. Luke Shaw, Malaysia, Wan-Bissaka, the list goes on and on, right? Of players who have been injured. Maguire, Kabi Manu, Ahmad, everybody. The list goes on and on. They are not getting fitter if they are getting injured. Lisandro Martinez, obviously. Or if they're exacerbating existing injury issues. And the problem with that as well is if that many players are getting injured, then the players who are not injured, do you think they're fully fit? And by fit, I don't mean are they in good shape to run a lot? Are they healthy? I'm talking about when they show up on the pitch, are they fit in terms of having the maximum energy to run their ass off for 90 minutes and play? Because I don't think so. When Hannibal comes on and outdoes anything a United player's done for 5 years, that's a problem. There's it's kind of almost a joke that players will come into United and look good long enough to get ruined by United, and then they look bad. And that's what we're running into. The players who are healthy are not fit, and it's not because they're not working hard, it's the opposite. They're walking into every game exhausted. I was able to, over the weekend prior to the Palace game, confirm this information with somebody else who knows United's side of things well, that United's setup, way they do training and all of that, the way they manage the workloads, which is what I've been talking about for weeks now. I am certain of this as information and not opinion, that United, the way United are managing the workload and training is wrong. It's very, very wrong. And it's really hard to know if there's a good plan and a good tactic and a good strategy and a good performance hiding underneath this, because players are walking into every game unfit, exhausted, not at the right levels of energy and fitness to perform at a maximum level. That's a fact. And when players make mistakes, they are tired. When players I meant to say that the opposite, but it's also true. Very often when you're seeing players making a lot of mental mistakes over and over, a lot of it comes down to physical exhaustion. The more tired, the more exhausted, the more overworked players are, the more likely they are to do that. There's so many times. Rashford is a notable example of this because he displays it, which I'm not sure is a good thing, but he does display it. He doesn't look fit to start games. He looks tired. And as soon as something goes wrong, the heads drop. And that's the same with everybody. But that is a marker of exhaustion when you look at it. And it's not just him. When it's happening to players like Casemiro, you're going to say Casemiro has a bad attitude? That Casemiro is someone who lets the manager down when he's not performing? You're going to say that about Casemiro? Has that ever been said about him in his career? You could say it about, you could make these accusations about other players who've been at United a long time. You can't make those accusations about Casemiro. You can't make those accusations about Lisandro Martinez, who was playing poorly and was proven then to be injured and unfit. You can't make those accusations about many of the players that it is happening to. So you cannot paint the entire squad with the same brush on this. There's something wrong, and it all comes back to, the way that United run things. And this whole thing will sound like it's an attack on the manager who runs training, and it's not, because Erik Ten Hag is a coach, and that's what he should have been. In modern football, you hire coaches. You hire a head coach, essentially, and you take care of everything else for them. Manchester United, under the Glazers, have continued to try and approach things with the Fergie way, which is to hope they get somebody who will take care of everything like Sir Alex did. And it's a huge mistake. Jose didn't like the sports science, so he dismantled it. Why? Why was that allowed? Why was that accepted? Then Ollie started putting some other things back in. The way that United run things is the priority is not to build a top-class team in every single department. The way that they run thing is, and this is where I've been going on about having to protect managers and such from themselves, the way they run thing is take the next manager, back him, which is essentially to tie his own noose, hang it up on the ceiling, and help them up on the chair. Instead of actually providing the support, they put the managers in the position to fail by making them responsible for the things they shouldn't be responsible for in the name of backing. And these are ambitious, driven people by nature of this business who think they're going to do the right thing. Ten Hag, Ollie, Jose, you can bet every single one of them thought they were doing the right thing in every area that they were making mistakes. And Ten Hag is making mistakes too. So, no, it's not about changing the manager. It's not about sacking the manager. None of that shouldn't be under discussion. It's a pointless discussion. There's no reason for it. It's not the right thing. I think Ten Hag probably has very good ideas as a coach, but who's stepping in and saying, hey, this is how training should be run to ensure that your players are actually fresh and ready? This is how this player should be managed. This is how this player should be managed. This is how this should happen. Who's doing that? Nobody. Nobody's doing that. And it's the same with recruitment. Nobody is stepping in and saying, hey, we shouldn't be doing this. We should be doing this. We should be doing this. And actually overseeing it to build a philosophy from the top down. It's just what the manager wants. It's wrong, and it's going to fail. And it has failed, and it continues to fail. Our rebuild, I was discussing this with somebody, is a joke. Because there's no rebuild. There was a plan heading into last summer, which was getting a young striker, getting a young midfielder, and getting a young center back. That was the original plan. We abandoned the striker to chase Frankie de Jong all summer, which failed, which resulted in overpaying for a right winger that isn't that good, that doesn't fit the rebuild, because you don't pay $85 million for a winger like Antony when you're in a rebuild. Paying for Casemiro, who was too old to be a part of a rebuild, paying for Lisandro Martinez, which was probably a good buy, and signing Christian Eriksen on a free, who had 6 months of fitness in him. This summer, it's a little bit better in terms of sticking with the plan for a rebuild, but it's not enough. Now we have a mixture where Rasmus Højlund isn't ready to play at a level that is required to win, but we have players who you need to start getting results with now. It's a mess. And it all comes together. This fitness and injury thing is the same issue. And in terms of how this season goes, I don't think it's going to go anywhere unless this fitness and injury issue is solved. And my biggest concern is it won't be. There was this article that came out about Richard Arnold, that whole meeting, that they investigated the injuries and the soft tissue management and determined they weren't doing anything wrong. They are. It is a fact. You cannot determine that. You cannot look and at what is going on and say it's not wrong. I don't care. Whatever your process is to investigate and to find out if you're doing something wrong, if it came to the conclusion that you're not doing anything wrong, then your processes are wrong. That's it. It's well known by people who know a lot better than I that the way United's workload management is being done is wrong, and that they do not have the setup to properly instruct on this and provide the support as needed in the setup that is needed. I think even Ten Hag had wanted to bring in somebody, and that was denied when he first came onto the job. But it's not even just about a single person. There should be an entire department instructing on this, the same as in everywhere. It's not an accident that in recruitment, 2 people at the heads of 2 divisions quit before last summer. There is not a proper setup behind the scenes at United, and there will not be so long as the Glazers are there and not prioritizing top class in these areas and building a philosophy from the top down instead of wholly relying on a manager to fix everything, which they won't, and they will fail, and then we'll be on to the next one who will fail. And that is what is going on. But I think this season will be derailed by these fitness and injury issues and this poor training regimen. And until that is resolved, we will not see the best from any players, and we will not see the best tactically, because we do not know. It's no accident when you heavily rotate suddenly in a cup game, yes, against easier competition, that you get a better result. It's not about the mentality of the players. It literally comes down to some of those players have not had to work as hard and are fresher, as we've seen. And some of them had just returned from injury and only had to play 45 to 60 minutes. And that explains it as well. So moving on to another point that I think is worth mentioning, because obviously this is something that people really love to talk about, is Marcus Rashford. He's having a pretty poor start to the season, I think. I think we could all agree that he's not performing at his best. However, the discourse around it is very odd. Ten Hag gets a lot of credit for last season. If that's the case, he owes most of it to Marcus Rashford, because it was Marcus Rashford's impeccable form after the World Cup that carried United almost individually through many games. You can't have it both ways. If it's Ten Hag's credit for getting Marcus Rashford going, then he's got to get him going again this season. At the same time, the biggest issue, I think, because Marcus Rashford hasn't been very good, probably should be rotated, probably should take a game off on the bench. United's form is tied to his, and that shouldn't be at this point in time. It shouldn't be that much that he doesn't perform, we don't perform. Nottingham Forest, the 2-0 comeback, almost entirely off the back of him creating goals. An assist, the cross to Bruno for the goal, and drawing a penalty. All 3 goals he was involved in. That cannot be the case still at United. There's something else has to change. One of the things that I see that we're not seeing a lot of in those patterns in the final third, and this comes down to overall, is all those, cut the fullbacks, the overlaps, the extra runs from midfield, the simple basics you see teams like City and Arsenal and Liverpool do. I don't see them. Most of the plan becomes hope Marcus Rashford can beat someone 2-on-1 or 3-on-1, and he's not. And he's not playing particularly well at it either. It's not working. So something has to change here, and I'm not sure what, but people have to have some nuance in this whole discussion. You can't blame the team not playing well on Marcus Rashford. You can't. The team shouldn't be reliant on him having a goal per game to win. It cannot be reliant on that. If that's the case, we will not win. You cannot have a team that is solely reliant on whether one player is performing and you have no other options there. And not even just performing, but performing to the level where he has to be doing almost what, performing at a world-class level every game to beat Crystal Palace, That can't happen. The setup is wrong, and it has to be fixed there. I do think we should be rotating more. I think that the cup game, all of that, I think we should be rotating regularly in the front three, moving through the players, getting different partnerships going and working on it, and worrying a little bit less about results and more about getting the systems in place. But, you know, it's tricky. So it's a challenging discussion on all of this, because we still haven't seen a time yet when we're not reliant on Bruno and Rashford to carry the team. And so it's easy to blame them when things are going wrong, but there's a lot of players not performing. And when they're not performing, nobody else is stepping up. And that is a problem. That is a serious issue that has to be resolved. Again, I don't know. Maybe it's going to take these fitness issues to be fixed for anything to change there, because it's hard to tell. Maybe that's behind all of it. It really might be. And in my opinion, that's probably the number one concern when I look at our performances this year. Is I could go on and on about individual players. I could talk about Rashford being poor and wasteful and this and that. I could talk about Rasmus Højlund being poor. I could talk about a lot of stuff. Casemiro, all of that. But when so many players are out of form, there's usually an underlying reason for it. And for me, it's like you have this giant fucking elephant in the room, which is everybody's getting injured, and we don't even notice when a player has a broken foot. We don't have to look beyond that. That's the reason. It's that simple. So hopefully there's enough introspection among people who are intelligent, like Erik ten Hag, to sort that out. Moving on, one of the reports that started coming out was about center backs. I think Fabrizio Romano started talking about how United are already planning on center back. Well, I've obviously been saying that since the end of the window. I've still been sharing my information, and it's obviously not as fast and as quick as during the window, but I've shared a lot about how United are already working on it, including center backs for both sides of this. And I think the names he mentioned are all names I've mentioned and have been mentioned before as well. They're looking at center backs, left center back and right center back. The priority has, I believe, been replacing Maguire and having someone start over Rafael Varane, who's getting on and has a little bit of issues with fitness. So you're talking about a right center back as the main priority. And that seems to be in alignment with what Fabrizio Romano reported, with the main names being Silva, Todibo, and Tapsoba. There are other names under consideration from both sides, but I just want to list out all the names that I've heard here. Inacio I've talked about. He's obviously more left side. Silva, Bastoni, Schurz, Simican, Todibo, and Tapsoba. Those are all the names at the moment, I believe, that I have heard in terms of center backs where there's at least been some looks at them. So those are names I would definitely keep under consideration. They're doing a lot of work on the midfield with names I've mentioned before as well, in terms of who they're looking for, who they want, who they might be, adding. There's names like Chik Doucouré and such at Palace that there have been previous checks on that I'm just checking out as well. Obviously, this will build up. The only other thing I want to mention, not to do with center backs, is that Daniel Malen is someone who's been offered to United as well as Liverpool and other clubs. I don't know that United are interested, but it would be... Well, he's Dutch, so do you think they'll consider it? They might. He could play on the right, he can play on the left. Anyway, he's just been offered. I don't actually know more than that about whether he's under consideration or not, but he has been offered by Dortmund. And obviously, the situation remains with Jadon Sancho that United are looking to replace him. I can say that as of last week, everything that I had been hearing, and I've seen some interesting things, is Sancho thinks he's doing the right thing for him. So I don't think the situation will change anytime soon, and I do expect he'll probably depart. With Antony returning, already back in training, I think Sancho's finished at United. So that's what I've got. So thank you for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on, and I will see you in the next one.